great organization called Men and Masculinity, and we are continuing the conversation series M&M Explores, and we are always blessed and highly favored to have this gentleman, and I hope I can call friend with us. We've met all right.
I would like
I
to have
met
you
him
call
a
me
number
friend.
of
Thank
years
you.
ago, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but time is advancing, and our journeys continue to bring us together on great journeys. Or I don't even know. It's Friday. Give me a break. It's a Friday. No, on great challenges, but overcoming challenges. I'm not going to introduce this man with too long because if you don't know who he is, you need to know who he is. Dr. Warren Farrell, written a book. I guess his most recent book is called The Boy Crisis. And one of the things I experience, I do work with fathers and men. I hear more and more of them talking about, have you heard about this guy? Can you tell me about this guy? And especially when it comes to our young men, they're part of our future. And I know that Dr. Farrell is very committed to young men. So we'd like to welcome to the Men of Masculinity M&M Explorers platform again, Dr. Warren Farrell. How are you today, sir? Absolutely.
Wonderful, and
It's
even a bit better because
always,
we're
I
talking.
always get enhanced and leveled up after a conversation or during a conversation with yourself. And we have to give a big star for Warren today. We were able to get him on without his wonderful assistant, Amy. And Amy, we love you, but Warren did a level up today. So next week, I'm going to give Amy a call and said, Warren did it. Warren did it. So before we get into our conversation, I want to shout out to some people who are live with us. Nazim from Italy is with us. We have Steve Redman from the M&M and Men of Masculinity team. Anthony Davis. We have Deborah Rosen, the First Lady of the Men of Masculinity Summit team. So we're looking forward to another great conversation. If you'd like to come into the Get Vocal room, there are spots open if you want to make comments on YouTube and Facebook. Those chat rooms are being monitored by the program lead of the M&M Explorers team or M&M and Masculinity team, Lee Rosen. Warren, for those who do not know about the Boy Crisis book, can you give a little background on it for us?
Yes, basically about 14 years ago, I started to do research on what ultimately became the boy crisis. And I was looking, I had my initial proposal to my publisher, had 10 causes of the boy crisis that were outlined. But the more I studied each of the causes, the more I realized that one cause was the hub cause. The others were either secondary causes or spoke causes, causes that sort of grew out of the hub cause. And I began to see that in all 56 of the largest developed nations, boys were falling behind girls in almost, for example, almost every academic subject. Boys' life expectancies in the United States were going down, which is the first time in recorded history that is happening. Their suicide rates were 6 times that of girls by the early 20s. 1,750% more than girls, and women when they were 85 or older. The IQs of boys and men were going down. The sperm counts were being reduced by 50%. The obesity rates and the depression, even though depression had always been measured as something that was an outcome of the way girls and women expressed depression. As soon as you expanded what depression meant to incorporate the way boys express depression, you found much greater rates of depression among boys than girls. There's much greater rates of obesity, and therefore many people don't know that boys who are obese also experience problems with basically with erections. And I'm not usually shy, just to
You're
think of the
good.
word for a second. I'm not afraid to say erection, right? the the and so and you may think, well, what a big deal, erectile dysfunction, but for an 18, 17, 16-year-old boy, that is a big deal. And so he becomes afraid of having presenting himself to a woman in a way that might lead to sex because he's afraid to be embarrassed. And therefore he starts getting addicted to video games and porn, rather than to real life women, and having the lower dopamine conversations that are required with a real life woman. And so all sorts of things happen. I eventually, in the process of doing this 14 years of research for the boy crisis, found more than 50 different areas that boys were suffering. But the common denominator was dad deprivation, the biggest cause. There were mental health problems, yes, but the mental health problems didn't seem to be nearly as common among boys who had both fathers and mothers. And even when you controlled for both socioeconomic variables and other variables, the same thing was true. I started seeing that other causes, like, it was very helpful for the school system to have male elementary school teachers. However, where boys had father involvement at home, the male elementary school teachers were not a crucial indicator of the boy doing well or not doing well. But when the boy did not have dad involvement at home, then to go from a dad deprived home to a male deprived school,
Excellent.
that's what
And
led
as
to
we
boys
continue on with
not
our
doing well.
conversation, I'd like to welcome Jeff and also welcome Michelle on the Get Vocal platform. You're a bad guy, Dr. Farrell, because you just gave a whole bunch of conversation topics not directly related to what we're supposed to chat about tonight. So, but I've already parking lotted them in regards to future conversations, because just some of the things like the lack of male teachers in the school system, dad deprivation. I think we're going to maybe touch a little bit about this tonight also. But what you're on to share with us tonight is about what dads do differently and what single moms can do. And when I first got this topic from your wonderful assistant, Amy, I wanted to know, are these intertwined? Are they two separate conversation topics?
No, one of the biggest misunderstandings is, men tend to not read about these issues. Tends to be issues that women read about, but those women who read about them in parenting magazines and so on. And the parenting magazines, even if the men did read them, do not explain the differences between dad style parenting and mom style parenting. And when I started looking at this, not only in the United States, but pretty much all around the world, there are very significant differences between dad and mom style parenting. So, for example, dads will sort of like say, "Okay, kids, let's roughhouse," and the kids will just get so excited, and and the dad will throw the kids onto the couch and say, "All right, your job is to jump in my back and and pin me down before I pin you down." I was talking about this at the Men in Masculinity conference, and the moms, as I said, there was like they look at this situation, they go, "Oh my God, I feel like the father's like just one more child to monitor." And so and what I described at that Men in Masculinity conference is all the things that roughhousing leads to. It leads to a bond between the father and the children. That bond allows the father to be able to say, "Okay, you won that roughhousing. That is, you were the guy that." Or girl that was most likely to pin me down most effectively, but in the process you just stuck your elbow in your sister's eye. That's not okay. So, "Oh, dad, we'll do it differently." Okay. And then the dad says, "Yes, I'll let you do it differently next time, and we'll try right again." And mom's going, "Didn't you just learn your lesson? The children got hurt, and you're still going back to doing the thing that led to the thing that I knew it was going to lead to, the children getting hurt." And mom's go, "I just can't believe it. This does convince me that he's just a child at heart." But what the dad doesn't explain, and moms can't hear what dads don't explain, is that by going back and giving the children another chance, he's giving them an opportunity to be empathetic to their brother and sister's needs. He's giving them an opportunity to be assertive, but not aggressive. And a mom may give the same lecture, but children don't learn from lectures. They learn from experiences much more than lectures. And so the dad is giving them another experience to distinguish between being assertive versus aggressive. And then they get caught up in what psychologists call emotional intelligence under fire. And under fire, they forget their promise to be considerate of their sister. So the dad says, "Okay, now stop the roughhousing. No more roughhousing till tomorrow night. Oh, Dad, we're sorry, we forgot. Nope, no more roughhousing till tomorrow night. And so then tomorrow night comes, and that's when the payoff time comes. The children realize that if I get the instruction that I have to not push my sister aside or be too rough on my brother either, my younger brother, that I'll lose the roughhousing, that I'll lose what I want. So therefore, I have to think of somebody else. Somebody else's needs. And I have to understand this distinction between being assertive versus aggressive, because if I don't understand it, if I don't get it in real life, I'm going to lose what I want. So the selfishness of getting more of what they want, that increases the bond, that increases the roller coaster fun that the kids are having with the dad. That's what leads the children to start being willing to make that distinction, much more than hearing from the mom, well, sweetie, you're too rough on your son or daughter. I mean, your brother or sister. Don't do that anymore. Okay, mom, we won't do it anymore. But when the mom doesn't take away something, the children feel, all right, I don't mind being reminded again. It's much more fun to have fun. And then, yes, mom will give her a little lecture and we'll ignore that and go on and have more fun. And so oftentimes moms will tell me, I get so frustrated. I have to repeat things again and again and again to my kids. Why do I have to do that? And why she has to do that is because oftentimes she will repeat things over rather than have any consequence to that. But that's just only one of 9 differences between mom and dad style parenting. You see this in so many levels. Kids will say, can I climb the tree, to the mom? And the mom will say, well, sweetie, maybe in a few years you can climb the tree, but not right now. You have to get older first. And dad will say, well, sweetie, yes, you can climb the tree, but do be careful. And mom will say, be careful. You're just telling the child to be careful. He or she could just fall and crack their head on the ground. And so the good solution, what I call checks and balance parenting, and the children that do best have checks and balance parenting. The good solution is the dad and mom do have a discussion about it. They may consider it an argument, but what they should consider it is understanding that they both have different styles of parenting, and the children do best when they have both styles combined. So, for example, the mom and dad may negotiate and say, okay, they can go out, she or he can go out and climb that tree, but only up to a certain level. Do you promise that? All right, I promise that. Not on these branches. Look how thin they are. They can be broken. They can break easily. Okay. And you have to go out there and be underneath the tree, and not just watching from the home. All right. And by the way, give me your cell phone. And so the dad goes out, and under those conditions, the child gets the best of both worlds. He or she is able to climb the tree. And what dads don't explain, because they don't know it, is that climbing that tree and the child assessing which risks are worth taking, which ones aren't, which ones may lead to a problem, which ones may not. That child can take those risks because it knows it has a security blanket underneath it of the father cushioning the fall. So the child can begin to learn. And no dad that I've ever met explains to the mom that when the child learns to differentiate those risks, the child's synapses in the brain fire more actively, and the child actually increases IQ, increases the ability to distinguish which risks are worth taking, which ones aren't, which ones might create some problems, but not problems that are so great it's going to lead to like a death or breaking of my arm. And so when dads don't explain these things, as I said a minute ago, moms can't hear what dads don't say. And so dads, I'm really finding it's so important that dads, when they look at those chapters in the Boy Crisis book, that they really understand that and explain those better. The unwitting instincts of dads they're built into our nature and our evolution, that dads have things to contribute that I know virtually no dad knows about to begin with. And if he does, often doesn't know how to explain that in a loving way to the mother, who also has the
You
best
just
intent of
heard
the child at
Dr.
heart, of
Warren
course.
Farrell dropping knowledge bombs. he was he was dropping. That is fantastic. Just to go back a little bit before we move forward, Anthony Davis said, uh, for the early part of what you shared with our audience tonight, men are being programmed to be addicted to video games, the internet, and porn. Boys and men are losing their ability to be social and social and reality, or losing sense of reality. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. The only thing I would say that I would use differently is the word programmed. I would say that here's the dynamic that often happens. The boy who doesn't have paternal discipline, the boundary enforcement that I was talking about a minute ago, usually as a result of not having that boundary enforcement, doesn't have postponed gratification. Postponed gratification is the biggest predictor of success or failure. And so without the postponed gratification that usually the dad brings from that boundary enforcement, the boy goes to school, gets distracted by a video game offer or a text to not finish homework, and so doesn't do as well in school. Or maybe he's tall and is a natural for the basketball team, but he isn't able to have the discipline to do all the drills that are necessary to not only be a natural but to make the team and know how to play in a team style way. Or he's really great at the piano or music as a musician or as an actor, but he doesn't have the discipline to do that either. So mom tends to be wonderful about seeing the boys gifts and saying, "Sweetie, you sing really well," or "My goodness, you play the piano much better than I did when I was your age and had a piano." And so she is very likely to encourage the boy to play that piano, to pursue his gifts. The problem is if he pursues his gifts and doesn't have the discipline that often the father brings to the parenting process, he then pursues the gifts but fails at being outstanding in the gifts and making the team, so to speak. Then he feels disappointed in himself and ashamed. After he tries that 3 or 4 times, he pursues his dream, he fails at his dream, he becomes afraid to dream. And that's when the beginning of a slippery slope sets in. And the slippery slope is, I'm afraid to dream. I'm not getting good feedback from my teachers. My girls, if I get to be 14, 15, and I start being interested in girls, the girls are dating all the winners, the performers, the football players, the quarterbacks, and so on. They're not dating the losers. I don't think I'm a loser. I'm really sensitive and I'm bright and I care a great deal. But the girls are treating me like I'm a loser. I feel really bad about that. I feel angry about that. And then my mother and father are not giving me compliments like they are my brother and sister. So the boy begins to withdraw into video games, because in video games he can master something he doesn't have. And when he masters something, and he is a hero through a virtual figure. If he starts feeling good about himself for short periods of time, or he begins to feeling rejected by girls and women, he goes into pornography, because pornography is access to a variety of attractive women without fear of rejection at a price he can afford. And so he starts getting into the things that give him satisfaction. And the problem, just to stay with porn for a minute, the problem with porn, you can do a moral argument about porn one way or the other and all sorts of things about porn, but the scientific problem with porn is that the first time the boy uses it, he may see a naked girl or woman and get really turned on, and that is very satisfying. But after seeing his 10th or 12th naked girl or woman, he needs something more exciting, and then something more exciting than that. And then he meets a woman in real life who may be open to being sexual with him, and he starts expecting things of that girl or woman that were portrayed in the part of the porn that made him excited, because at that level that he's now able to feel excited about. And so the girl feels like she's being treated as an object. So she withdraws from him, and she withdraws from him properly, because she
Right.
is being treated as an object. And so, but then he feels like, oh my goodness, I knew I wasn't, worthy of a woman or worthy of a girl, especially that girl, because she's so attractive. And that sends him back to the porn, back to more addiction, back to more of a problem, and the cycle repeats itself. And so, while he's not programmed to become addicted to porn or addicted to video games, I hope that process that explains the slippery slope that so frequently leads to boys becoming involved and then in pornography or video game addiction. It's part of the withdrawal process, the part of not feeling secure about having the much lower dopamine level. That is, the dopamine is your feel good drug. And when you're dealing with a real life woman or a real life conversation, that only stimulates dopamine at, say, like this type of level. But whereas with a video game, you get involved in it and it suddenly gives you overcome the enemy, and it spikes the dopamine much higher. So that's where the addiction begins to happen in both the video game
Earlier
and in
on
the
in our
porn.
conversation, you were talking about how fathers and mothers parent differently. And one of the things that I do is, I think I've shared with you before, I work at a father's parenting center. And I teach a course about parenting from a father's perspective. And I wonder if you could just share with us, especially to the
Mm-hmm.
fathers and also to the mothers out there, the importance of play. Because earlier on, you were talking about, fooling around, this and that. And mothers may not understand it as much as fathers. So could you just spend a little bit of time about the importance of
Yeah.
play when we're raised, especially when a father's raising children?
Mhm. Yes, play is the greatest bond creator. Play creates a bond by the child feeling, I'm associating with dad, I'm going to have fun. And so the child, with dad, the child is like a roller coaster with safety. The reason kids love roller coasters is because not only the excitement, but they also know that there's a safety net there. And what the children who are playing with dad is, it's not dad as one more child. It's dad as a stimulator of excitement that creates a bond, but that bond also creates the child being able to taking risks, trust somebody, trust people who are excited and playing with him. So the child, if a stranger threw the child up into the air, the child would be freaked out. But when dad throws the child up into the air, the child knows that dad's either going to catch it or the child fall on the bed, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And he wants to get up or she wants to get up and do it again with dad. And so now that creates leverage for the dad. That bond is like a reservoir of good feelings and good a reservoir of goodwill between the dad and the child. And so when the dad then can use the leverage of that reservoir of goodwill to say, okay, but now, sweetie, you've got to now, it's now 6:45, and you have to be in bed by 9. So I'll tell you what, we'll pick up the roughhousing again. When you're finished your homework, and show me your homework. Do your homework first, show it to me, and while you're changing your clothes and brushing your teeth, I'll look over the homework. If you've done it well, whenever you're finished your homework, your chores, and all this, we'll come back and do the roughhousing. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! And then the child focuses on on the homework and focuses on getting the teeth brushed and so on. And then dad goes, you rushed a little bit too quickly through your homework. This isn't good enough. That's not really a brushed teeth. That's only you didn't floss or do whatever. And you did that chore, but you did it sloppily. And so, all righty, dad, and it goes back to it. But after the dad does that a few times, the child learns that I'm only going to waste more time and lose that extra time before that 9 o'clock deadline to get the extra play time that I want. Now, here's the result of this different style. Dads and moms are studied for when children are with their dads and they set a bedtime. The bedtime set by the average dad is on
Makes
average
sense.
later than the bedtime set by mom. But the studies of the children show that the children actually get to bed sooner and get to sleep sooner with the dad, even though the time set was later, because the children learn very frequently to manipulate mom by going ahead and saying things like, mom, it's 9 o'clock, I know, but I didn't finish my homework. Oh my goodness, you didn't finish your homework. Okay. You better stay up and we'll work on that homework together. Do you need help with that homework? Yeah, mom, I need help with the homework. And so mom then spends to 9:15 to 9:30. Okay, we finished the homework. Now can I have the story read to me like dad does? Okay, we'll read the story to you. Now it's 9:45. And so that's oftentimes the difference. But one of the things that allowed the father to say, you need to get everything done sooner, is because the child knew that it would have more fun with the father later, that it would have its favorite activity, whether that was more roughhousing or favorite story read to it. But the mother goes, if the choice of the dad is more roughhousing, the mom goes, oh, you can't do roughhousing just before bed. You'll get the child all worked up. And in fact, it doesn't seem to work that way. When if the child knows that that the roughhousing is until 9 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock, or 10 of 9, and 10 of 9 we'll do a story till 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, you go to sleep. Big kiss, big hug, good night, and that's it. And so the child tends to accept that and know that that it has these incentive and fun, and this fun type of play that you were talking about, it happens with dads in so many ways. If you go out to it and just observe this rather than just believe me by taking my word. When I did the research for the boy crisis, one of the things I observed is the differences between the ways mom and dads go, what they do differently at a playground. Moms are very likely to take the children to a playground, as are dads. But when they're at the playground, the moms will often sit and either text or read or do something and keep a general eye on the child to make sure the child is safe. Dads, when they go to the playground, are much more likely to play with the child, even sometimes run through some type of obstacle course with the child at the playground. You'll see that much more from dads than you will from moms. Now, go to a supermarket, and you'll see dads and moms shopping. I mean, dads and children shopping together. And oftentimes the child will be doing something like, okay, your job is to my job is to have the basket here. Take the Cheerio box and see if you can throw it in the basket and get it into the basket. And so taking the Cheerios off the shelf doesn't just mean taking the Cheerios off the shelf. It means an opportunity to have fun and see if you can throw it in the basket. Or dad will take the nutrition facts on the side and say, okay, find me the sugar amount here. Okay, what do you know about sugar? 9 grams? What does that mean? Well, it means it's 3% of your daily value. Not of sugar, it doesn't. Look at that under sugar. Oh, 0% of it. Well, why does it say 0%, even though there's 9 grams of sugar, but the other one says it's a higher percentage of daily value? So that type of dialogue goes on much more. So dad is teaching nutrition, math, looking at the nutrition dimensions to begin with, all through a game.
Everything okay on your end? Okay. Glass of water.
Yes, just here and there I choke on it, but every death I revive.
Anthony Davis has another question for you, Warren. He's saying, Warren, do you believe that the absence of a parent or parental figure can cause a person to be over or underprotective of a child?
Yes, I'd say this is especially true of moms after divorce. Moms tend to feel guilty about being divorced, and therefore, as do dads. But more frequently, I've heard that from moms, and then the moms feel that guilt. They don't want to make a child do something, that they don't want to exert tough love to a child that is sad, either by being bullied or especially after divorce. Like, I know the child's not being able to see his father or her father, therefore I'm not going to make life tough on you. And so the mom is coming out of a loving and caring heart, but oftentimes she doesn't therefore require of the child what is needed to have the discipline to accomplish what the child wants to accomplish. And the child is usually an underperformer as a result of that. And again, sometimes the father is the one that is the soft marshmallow, and the mom is the one that's more the disciplinarian. But sometimes disciplinarian gets very confused. Disciplinarian is often seen as the person who says, you can't do this, you can't do that. Moms are very good at saying you can't do this, can't do that. They're more likely to say you can't do this, you can't do that. That's not discipline. What discipline is enforcing the boundary, enforcing what you say. Moms are more likely to set a boundary, but less likely to enforce it. It's the enforcement of boundaries that is that creates the sense of a child needing to follow through with what is expected, but also it inspires the child to respect the enforcer. A mother or father that sets a boundary and doesn't enforce it, creates a disrespect
Yeah,
on the part of the
great.
child to the mother or the
Especially
father.
just focusing on fathers here. Uh, I've known in my journey dealing with fathers that a lot of fathers haven't didn't have great relationships with their father. Don't don't A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them do.
Do or
How
don't.
much of an impact does that
Don't.
have
Yes, yes.
on what you were looking at the boy crisis? Have you seen relationships between the lack of fatherhood, relationships with the dads with their father impacting the boy crisis?
Yes. A father who doesn't have a good relationship with his father can go one of two ways. Either as a either as a result of not having much contact and love from from his father, the son says, "I am not going to do that with my child, and I am going to be more involved because I see how much it hurt me to not have a father that was involved." Or alternatively, he mimics and sees and does and behaves in such a way that his father behaved. Especially that's true if the father was strong on the discipline and small on the approval. So if a father is but as and distant, if those three things happen, the father is distant. He's very does discipline, but not very often around the child, and he's very sparse with his approval. Then the father that we're talking about raising this new child, his son, will sometimes be so focused on trying to get the approval of the father by becoming a medical doctor or a lawyer, or working as a CEO and working 80 hours a week, because he's trying to prove himself. I'm not the unworthy person that my father said I was through all the criticism. The most frequent pattern, though, is that boys who are parented with minimal father involvement will often become father. When they become fathers, they will become very involved fathers if they feel that they're going to be approved of by their wife, and if they have enough security of feeling that they will be approved of by their father for being an involved father. So a lot of dads are very deeply affected by the approval that they will get from both their dad and their wife. But between those two, the wife's approval or disapproval is by far the most important. The father's approval will be a deep hole in the heart, but and that will be the impact of a dad's lack of approval. Or but the mother's, if the mother says no, I admire you. I can see. I'm so proud of you when you're playing with the children. I love the way you hug them. I love the way you kiss them. I love the way you tell them that you love them. When a woman behaves that way toward a man, that man will be a wonderful dad because he wants her approval, and he'll love the the way there's the men's oxytocin increases also when a child's looking at him or her at him with those eyes, those smile, and all the things that biology creates in the child to do. We have to remember. I hope if you read the Boy Crisis, read the section that was one of the most fascinating sections for me to research. It was a section on what happens with a dad when an infant is born. One of two things happen. Either the father engages with the child and is with the child at a very early age, the infant at a very early age. And when that happens, the entire brain of the father, a father begins to build a parallel brain to the mother instinct brain. A whole nest of neurons are dormant until that infant is born. If the if the father immerses himself in the child's life at a very early age, all of those that bed of neurons begins to become activated, and the father ends up with a father instinct that is not exactly like, but parallel to the maternal instinct that involves a lot of engagement, protection, and so on. His testosterone level goes down, so he's not so interested in women outside the home. He's more interested in the things inside the home. Conversely, if the father feels like, now the child is born, my job here is to make sure, and then there may be a second child on the way, or there's twins. Now my job here is to give up teaching and go into administration, or give up teaching and quit that and become an insurance salesman nationwide. Then he experiences the father's catch-22. The father's catch-22 is learning to love the family by being away from the love of the family in the workplace. And then a difference that set of neurons do not connect. The birth of that infant means to him, I have to increase my obligation to the workplace. That's what leads, by the way, to men, not to men earning more than women, but to fathers earning more than mothers. Men don't earn more than women when they have the same education, the same lack of children. When women and men have no children, never have had children, and have never been married, women earn 17% more than men do. When men and women have children, they become dads and moms. That's when dads give up what they want to do what they have to do that earns more money, so the children and family can be better protected, be in a better neighborhood, better schools, and so on. And that's unfortunately led to many feminists saying, oh, men earn more than women. That's because they're more privileged or have more power. No, that's men forfeiting power. That is forfeiting what they love to do, which is what power really is. It's feeling control over your own life, doing what your fantasy is, doing what you want to do. Many, many men give up their being a musician, being an actor, being an artist, being a teacher, because they feel that those professions won't earn as much money, because on average, the more a profession, the more fulfilling
And
a
time is
profession
flying
is,
so
the
fast. So I
less
want
it
to make
is
sure that we
likely to
get to
pay.
the second part of our conversation, whatever time is left. What can single moms do to help push back the boy crisis?
I'm so glad you
It's
asked that,
okay.
because
It's all right. No, it's all good.
I'm realizing as we're talking here, I get carried away, and many single moms may be watching and saying, "Well, my the first thing you can do if you're a single mom is study all the differences in dad style parenting." My wife, often when she looks at that part of the boy crisis book, she said, I didn't, when the dad of our children went off to a playground and they would sometimes get hurt, I would accuse him of allowing them to get hurt. And so I was fearful of having more, that my dad, my ex, have more time with the children. And so, but when she looked at it from the perspective of, well, maybe they are more likely to get hurt, but maybe from that hurt, they can learn something from the dad about how to avoid the hurt in the future. And so these are the types so the first thing you can do is study what dads do differently, explain to the biological dad that you value this now in a way that you didn't value before. And remember in the back of your mind that men, when they're told they're needed, are not only willing to make sacrifices, they are willing to die. That's what we told men during every generation. We said, you're needed to fight this war. And men would give up their lives, be disposable, to contribute service and respond to their being needed to fight this war. That's much easier to love and be loved at home than it is to kill and be killed abroad. And so when you tell a man that his style of parenting is needed, and here's what your style of parenting is that just doesn't come natural to me, whether it's roughhousing or that boundary enforcement, please, I need you. The child needs you in ways that are not necessarily easy for me to do. That's what will bring almost all men back. However, if you're a single mom and the man is really toxic in a major way, after you've read the 9 things that dads do differently and understand them, then bringing a stepdad into your life may be a good option. But don't just choose a stepdad and then Expect that he will agree with and take his advice only when he agrees with you. Make sure you, otherwise you'll do the same thing as you might have done to the biological dad. Um, Stepdads, 9 out of 10 times, become advisors to the mom, but do not have equal power with the mom. To have equal power with the mom means checks and balance parenting, where you don't just do what the dad suggests when you get his help doing it and when you agree with him, but you look at what the differences are that are so both important for the child to have both, and you work from there. Let's say that the stepdad doesn't work either. Then get your child involved with Cub Scouts. Cub Scouts have very good studies done to show that they increase character development of young children. Boy Scouts, you'll see a whole breakdown of what Boy Scouts do in the Boy Crisis book. And that breakdown, I deconstruct what Boy Scouts are about to show what, to help the reader understand why it encourages the best of masculinity and discourages the worst of masculinity. If you're at all faith-based in your orientation, get your child involved in a faith-based community. But after you've checked out the pastor, minister, rabbi, or imam, and he's a good person, and make sure it's a he for your son, and whatever for either he or she for your daughter, then get that. Make sure that that the imam or the rabbi or the priest or minister gets your child involved with other boys his age, to talk about their feelings and their fears and what's behind the mask of masculinity that almost all boys have. And that will allow your son to not feel so alone and deserted. Next, get your son involved in sports. Not only, there's usually when we think of sports, we think of team sports. Team sports are the best type of sports to get your son involved in. But it's also very important to get your son involved in pick-up team sports, where that child goes to a playground and says, okay, I'm looking over there at Dr. Vibe, who I just see as a strong, big guy. Is he going to beat me up if I foul him, or is he going to sort of just say no problem and and pass the ball to me again, or or not, or be a potential best friend? And so, how do I pick up the difference between what's his vibe, right? And how do I pick up what his vibe is? And so that's the type of learning experience your child can get from the pickup team sports. Pickup team sports, because you're inventing and creating all these new things. Who's this person who's a stranger? Should I play full court or half court? What are the rules that we should set? Is fouling allowed? And if so, where's the difference between being assertive and aggressive, like we talked about before? All those things are what you learn from pickup team sports. Pickup team sports is wonderful preparation for being an entrepreneur. Then there's a third type of sports, and the three of these together are what I call the liberal arts of sports. Make sure your son is involved with all three of these liberal arts. The third is where the child learns to be able to develop discipline by himself, that he doesn't just need a team. So that might be tennis, that might be gymnastics, where you are part of a team, or track. You're part of a team, but I contributed to the team when I won my 100-yard dashes. So but I had to go out there, and when I did my 100-yard dash, I didn't pass a ball off to somebody else and learn when to and when not to. It was all about self-discipline. So self-discipline from individual sports, team sports for obvious reasons of learning how to cooperate, extremely good preparation for being in the corporate world or any type of bureaucracy, and pick up team sports for being involved in preparing to be a corporate person, not a corporate person, but to start your own business and to be an entrepreneur. So all of these things are just a few of the many, many things that a single mother can do so that her child can to have the equivalent of, and not the, this does not replace
Excellent.
a
Well, our
biological
time
dad,
is fleeing
but it
fast, but I
certainly
want to get just a
minimizes
few more quick moments of
the
Warren's
probability that the
precious
child
time.
will have
Anthony
challenges.
Davis is saying, my mother was a single mother and raised my brother and I. She always made sure that we had men in our lives, i.e., a friend of the family who rented a room in our house, our pastor, our youth minister, club Boy Scout leaders, etc. My mother encouraged me to have males who enjoyed comic books, Star Trek, ham, radio as well.
Mm. Fantastic. Yes, that really is so helpful. One of the, if you do have a biological father in your life or a stepfather, one of the things that I did as a stepfather with the woman who became my wife and the children that were the children of a former marriage that my wife was had family dinner nights with the children, and so family dinner nights can become family dinner nightmares, and so the one of the things I found that came up again and again, and when I was doing the research for the boy crisis, was that the knowing how to construct and form a family dinner night so it not only becomes not a family dinner nightmare, but the most constructive, looked forward to time that controversial topics are taken. You're not fearful of what you talk about, but everyone learns how to speak and be listened to, and everyone learns how to listen, including not just the children being listened to, but the children learning how to listen to the parents as well. And so that, and when in families where family dinner nights have really been practiced in the type of way that I talk about it in the appendix of the boy crisis, I find some of the feedback I've gotten is that the children, the children fail, that children that are related to that are in the classroom of the boy, they want to come over to family dinner night where that boy is having that, because the conversations are so exciting. They may be about politics, they may be about sex, they may be about things that are different, but everybody feels heard, nobody feels interrupted, everybody feels understood, and it's so exciting to enter into controversial
Nice,
conversations
very, very
without feeling
nice.
like you're either going to be put down,
Winding down here, but I
dismissed,
want to
not
get one
heard,
more thing
or
in quickly.
contradicted,
You're
or
a
interrupted.
resident of the United States, and we all know about the social political climate that's going on in your country right now. Are you seeing more attention paid on this subject since you've written the book?
It would be very tempting for me to say yes, because every author wants to feel like his or her book is having a lot of impact, and I think that what I do observe is two things. One is that that parents or professionals who read the book, yes, they feel almost revolutionarily affected by this. Also, ministers and priests and rabbis that read the boy crisis are very deeply impacted by it. But
Yep.
by far and away, but I also am chair, as you probably know, of a coalition to create a White House Council on Boys and Men. And so I went out to Iowa, and I interviewed 7 of the Democratic presidential candidates to try to get them understanding what the boy crisis was about, and to encourage them to bring that up in the debates. And many of them received me very
Wow.
well. I'd say all of them received me very well.
Mm.
Andrew Yang and John Hickenlooper received me extremely well, but none of them brought the issue up in the debates. And so then I also went to I began to become, as a result of my speaking on the Boy Crisis book, I began to become well known in certain circles that led to the White House discovering me. And so I have had multiple meetings at the White House. And the White House is not just interested and persuaded by the fact that there is a boy crisis, but they are actively planning to do something about it. I've been asked to write a portion of President Trump's State of the Union message in first draft form that he could potentially use, distort or to modify, to say what he feels it will be most effective to introduce the boy crisis. So I think that we will be, from what I can tell, early next year, you will see President Trump or the Trump administration bringing the boy crisis to the country's attention. And one of the advantages and disadvantages we have in the United States is usually when something is brought to the country's attention in the United States, it gets
Wonderful.
brought
Well,
to the world attention.
Warren, we're hitting the
And in
top of the
some
hour,
ways,
so I
that can
don't
be
want
very
to take up much
destructive.
more of
But
your time.
I think in this
Do
way,
you
it will
have
be
any
very.
final words? And if people want to find out more information about yourself and or the boy crisis, how can they do that?
Yes, fortunately, the Amazon is having a sale on the paperback of the Boy Crisis. That's the least expensive, so either go there. But I say I get as much, maybe even more positive feedback from the Audible version. I read every single word of the Boy Crisis in Audible form, and a lot of men and women say that they love when they commute. They really love listening to the Audible version of the book, or alternatively, when they're working out, that works for them. So I get a lot of people. I guess I get probably some of the most enthusiastic comments
Wonderful.
about the people
Well, I'm
who,
just going to try something on here for those
read
who
or
are
hear the Audible version of the
this.
Boy
You
Crisis.
won't be experienced this.
Hey, Warren, it looks like we lost Dr. Vibe. So I'm not sure what happened. It must have been something with his internet connection or whatever that experiment he was talking
Okay,
just
Yes,
about to
back.
do.
yes.
Didn't turn out well.
I am
Oh,
back. No problem. I was going to. So I was going to
Yes.
show the
You
actual
lost.
Boy Crisis
I
website,
must have
but
been part of
for
Lost
those who
and
want to know
Found.
more information about Warren the Boy Crisis, go to the boycrisis.org. All the information is there. I myself am the host of the Eminent. Put up here. There we go. We don't even need a screen share. There we go. We don't need the screen share. We got it. We don't even need the screen share. It's right there to
There's a
find out
copy
more
of the book.
information.
More,
I'm the
more
host
important
of
than
the
me.
M&M Explorers Conversations. If you want to find out more information about M&M Explorers or Men and Masculinity, go to menandmasculinity.com and you'll get all your information there. Warren, as always, a pleasure to have you on. Continued success. Very excited that the Boy Crisis is on the radar of the national agenda of the United States. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Always a pleasure. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure talking to you. If I may I say one last thing, which is that the Men in Masculinity conference that I attended was among the best conferences I have spoken at or attended in my entire life. And you all did a wonderful job with putting it together, with bringing thoughtful, diverse leaders there. And so the next conference that comes up, I would encourage any listener to really get involved and enjoy it and experience
Thank you
something that
so much.
for
Very
many
much
people really
appreciated on
creates a
that.
different impact
Thank you
on
very
their
much for
life and the way
watching,
they
everybody.
raise their children.
Follow all our social media platforms for the next great conversation. Good night, everybody. Be well and keep the faith.